I was an accountant who kept a tidy balance sheet, but nothing in my life had prepared me for a ledger that wouldn't balance. My name is Nathan, and for 23 years, I was married to Veronica. We had a life that, from the outside, looked perfectly balanced. A successful small business, a lovely home in the suburbs, and a daughter, Emma, who was now away at college. We were a portrait of suburban stability. I thought our foundation was rock solid. I was wrong. The first tremor hit about 18 months ago. Veronica, who had always been content with her part-time work at a local nonprofit, suddenly found a new professional passion. She started working later, taking on extra projects, and coming home with a spark I hadn't seen in years. The source of this newfound energy was a new colleague, a volunteer coordinator named Trevor. His name became a frequent, almost melodic part of her conversations. Trevor had fresh ideas. Trevor was making a difference. Trevor was truly inspiring. I was genuinely happy for her, believing she had found something that reignited her spirit. Looking back, I should have paid more attention to the way her eyes lit up when she spoke of him. The late nights at the office became a regular occurrence, followed by weekend work sessions and hushed phone calls taken just outside the room. When I asked about the long hours, her answers were vague: donor cultivation, event planning, and the like. My trust in her was absolute, and I never thought to question her. That trust, so steadfast, was the very thing that made me so vulnerable. With Emma at college, the house had grown quieter, and I had thrown myself into expanding my firm. I even encouraged Veronica's increased dedication to her work, thinking we were simply entering a new phase of our lives, one of personal rediscovery. The betrayal stings, but the knowledge that I had actively supported it in my ignorance is an almost unbearable kind of pain. The truth came to light in the most ordinary of ways. Veronica had left her laptop open on the kitchen counter. A notification from an unfamiliar messaging app popped up. The preview read, "Can't wait to see you tonight," from Trevor. My stomach clenched. I tried to reason it away. Maybe it was just a friendly heart emoji, a new age work culture thing. But the gut feeling was a cold, hard knot. That night, after she was asleep, I took her phone. What I found was a digital chronicle of a life I didn't know existed. The messages, spanning 8 months, were a sickening roadmap of their affair. Plans for secret meetings, intimate conversations, and images I wish I could erase from my memory. But the most gut-wrenching part wasn't the infidelity itself. It was the way they spoke of me. I was the boring accountant, the predictable husband, a man she felt trapped by. Trevor's jokes at my expense, their pet names for each other, and their discussions of a future together. As if our 23 years of marriage were nothing more than a temporary inconvenience. I spent 3 days in a fog of disbelief. Part of me wanted to confront her immediately, to shout and demand answers. But my logical, methodical nature took over. I needed to understand the full scope of the damage before I could act. I started digging. I examined our bank statements more closely and found a trail of expensive dinners, hotel stays, and jewelry, all disguised as work expenses or gifts. She had been funding their affair with our joint accounts, using the money we had built together to finance the destruction of our life. I spoke with a divorce attorney, not to take action just yet, but to understand my options. He advised me to document everything. So, like a detective in my own life, I began taking screenshots, printing bank statements, and building a comprehensive case. It was a surreal process, trying to prove to myself that the person I had shared my life with was a complete stranger. The confrontation happened on a Tuesday evening in March. I printed some of their conversations and left them on the kitchen table. When she came home, she saw them, and her expression wasn't one of guilt or remorse, but of sheer annoyance. She didn't deny it. Instead, she went on the offensive, painting our marriage as a hollow shell. She claimed I was emotionally distant, too focused on work, and that the affair had shown her what real love felt like. She wasn't sorry, she said. She was finally happy, and she wanted a divorce, fast. I asked if there was anything left to salvage, if she'd consider counseling. and she looked at me with a mix of pity and contempt, as if I were pathetic for even suggesting it. She was in love with Trevor. She packed a bag and left. Within a week, I was served with divorce papers. But they weren't just a formality. She was asking for spousal support, half of my business assets, and primary custody of our home. She argued that she had sacrificed her own career to support my success and deserved compensation. But the true act of psychological warfare came during our first meeting with our attorneys. Veronica walked in with Trevor sitting right beside her. My lawyer was dumbfounded. Trevor, with an audacity that took my breath away, had the nerve to chime in during the meeting, claiming I was being unreasonable about the business valuation and that Veronica deserved more for her unpaid contributions. This man, who had been sleeping with my wife, was now trying to dictate my divorce settlement. The mediation sessions were a nightmare. They came as a united front, whispering and exchanging glances, presenting demands as if they were owed something for the privilege of betraying me. It was a coordinated attack, a game of psychological warfare disguised as legal proceedings. That's when I started to think about Trevor's situation more carefully. I remembered a message I had seen, where Veronica joked about how they were both trapped in unfulfilling marriages. I'd been so consumed by my own pain that I hadn't considered the other family he was destroying. I found his wife, Rebecca, on social media. She looked happy, with photos of their kids and family vacations. She had no idea. I struggled with the decision to contact her. It felt like an intrusion, but with every aggressive demand they made, I was pushed closer to the edge. Finally, after a particularly brutal session, where they demanded I liquidate my retirement fund, I made the call. Rebecca was confused at first, but her voice changed when I explained what I had discovered and offered to share my evidence. 3 days later, she called me back. She had confronted Trevor and he had admitted to the affair. But there was more. She had looked through his phone and computer and found evidence of at least 2 other affairs over the past 5 years. She also discovered financial records that shocked us both. Trevor had been telling Veronica that he was financially stable, but in reality, he was deep in debt, behind on his mortgage, and had been funding their affair with credit card cash advances. The gifts and dinners he used to impress Veronica were all purchased with borrowed money he couldn't afford to pay back. But the most critical discovery came from the recordings Rebecca had made of her conversations with him. In his attempts to downplay his relationship with Veronica, he had admitted to manipulating her, encouraging her to pursue an aggressive divorce settlement so they would have money to start their new life together. He coached her on what to demand, how much to ask for, and even suggested legal strategies. Rebecca, heartbroken but determined, filed for divorce and offered to testify about Trevor's manipulation of my divorce proceedings. When my attorney filed a motion to include her as a witness, the dynamic shifted immediately. Suddenly, Veronica's lawyer requested a private conference, asking pointed questions about Trevor's involvement. The final mediation session was surreal. Veronica came alone, looking exhausted and defeated. Trevor, facing his own messy divorce, was no longer a factor. Rebecca's sworn testimony about his financial lies and manipulation of Veronica's settlement demands had completely changed the game. Faced with the possibility of this information becoming public, Veronica's position collapsed. She finally saw the truth. The man she had destroyed our family for was a serial cheater who had been using her to try to solve his own financial problems. We settled on a much more reasonable division of assets. She received a modest settlement and dropped her request for spousal support. Most importantly, she agreed to keep the details of the affair and the subsequent legal battle private, protecting our daughter and my business. I heard that Veronica and Trevor's so-called great love story didn't survive the harsh reality of their separate divorce proceedings. Their relationship, built on lies and financial fantasy, crumbled once it was forced into the light. Rebecca and I occasionally exchange messages, checking in on our kids and our healing. She's rebuilding her life, focusing on a new career she's passionate about, and her children are thriving. As for me, I'm still picking up the pieces. The betrayal changed me, but in a strange way, it also revealed a truth I never would have known. My relationship with Emma is stronger than ever, She saw through Trevor's manipulation from the beginning and has been an incredible source of support. I never thought I'd say this, but in a way, I am grateful for the affair. It tore down a life built on a lie and gave me the chance to build something new, something real. The hardest lesson I learned is that you can love someone completely and still not know them at all. But the most important one is this: when people show you who they are, believe them. Don't make excuses for their behavior, and don't let them convince you that your reality isn't real. Trust is fragile, and once it breaks, it's never quite the same. But sometimes what you build to replace it is far stronger.